Welcome back to the 365 Driven podcast. Today, we've got an icon of sorts that I consider one of the best authors that really is living or ever lived. I'm a big fan of his books. He's created 6 New York Times bestsellers, including The 48 Laws of Power, which is celebrating its 25th year anniversary this year. It's over 2 million copies sold of that book. The other one is Art of Seduction. The other one is 33 Strategies of War. The 50th Law, which he collaborated with 50 Cent, the rapper, Mastery in 2012, and also The Laws of Human Nature. And Robert Greene, welcome to the show, man. I can't wait to have this deep conversation with you. We had some good conversations when we met back in Nashville a few months ago, and here we are, part 2 today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too as well, Tony. So thank you so much for having me.
So I want to get into a little bit of the background before we jump in, because maybe some people out there that don't read a lot, they don't know who Robert Greene is right now. But I think there was a very interesting thing as you grew up in Los Angeles in a Jewish household. And although you don't claim to be super religious, you studied Zen Buddhism and Stoicism and all these different things of believing. So like, give us a scoop of what your childhood maybe looked like.
Well, my childhood was actually fairly happy and fairly normal. I'm an older guy, I hate to admit. So I grew up in the 1960s here in Los Angeles, and we lived in a kind of a woodsy area, a canyon. And I had lots of friends, and we played all kinds of very, very mischievous games. I won't even go into them. Some of them were downright kind of very naughty, like boys getting into trouble, a lot of war games and things like that. And sports played a big role in my life growing up. My father, loved sports, and that's how we kind of bonded. And basketball was my main pleasure, but I did Little League and flag football and the whole thing. My parents pretty much left me alone. My dad, worked. He had a traditional job. He was a salesman, very middle-class background. And being left alone a lot and having a slightly introverted nature, I took to books at an early age and kind of discovered myself through books and through reading, and decided maybe around the age of 8 or 9 that I wanted to be a writer. And in high school, I hate to admit it, but I got heavily into drugs because that was sort of the period, and my high school was like that. And then I kind of carried over into college, and I had many very memorable experiences. I don't regret it at all, but I sort of decided to stop at some point. But that was my childhood, growing up in kind of a woodsy neighborhood, playing lots of outdoor games. No video games weren't even invented then. So we were always outside, lots of sports. For some reason, because it wasn't that far removed from World War II, excuse me. We loved playing all kinds of war games. So that was kind of my childhood, yeah.
Yeah, it seems pretty ordinary growing up, small town. Me and my
Very
friends used
ordinary.
to do the same things. We used to shoot each other with BB guns and do all kinds of crazy stuff. So I get it. And
oh yeah,
back then, I was born in 1972, so I'm a decade behind you. But I remember Evel Knievel and the stuntmen and all those crazy things. And I was the kid, man. If you had a dare and you're going to put an extra brick under the bike ramp, that was me. I was going to go do that. So I get it. So
well,
fun stuff.
You ended up following that path.
I did.
I remember my favorite toy, if you will, when I was a child was what's called a flexi. I don't know if they had that, if you ever knew what those were.
Was that Flex Armstrong?
No. It's basically a sled on wheels, because we don't have snow here.
Okay.
So it's like a sled. It looks like a sled, but it's on wheels, and you can steer it. And it had little kind of brakes. It was so dangerous. My mom ended up like kind of deliberately running over it with her car, so I couldn't play with it anymore. But we would go barreling down these mountains with that flexi, kind of like your kind of experiences there, had no fear whatsoever. Broke a few bones, but here I am still alive to tell about it. So yeah.
That's what they say is scars are better than tattoos because the stories are usually better.
Right. Definitely.
So you knew you wanted to be an author, writer. You gave a really good TED talk. I watched this a few weeks ago. You gave a TED talk back in 2013, and you said the key to transforming yourself was the title of that show. And you talked about how you worked up something like 50 different jobs, like, and you weren't really ever satisfied. You're kind of bouncing around doing different things and even different countries. So give us a scoop on what that part of your life was like.
Yeah, my girlfriend back then, who's now my wife, we counted one day, and I think we got to about 60, and we just gave up. Because there are probably some more there that I don't remember. I never could quite figure out where I wanted to fit, what I was meant to do in life. I knew I wanted to be a writer, but what kind of writing? I had to make a living. And I'm curious, so I tried lots of different things. But the other thing is, I don't really like working for other people. That's kind of a main part of my character. I don't like the politicking. I always feel like these bosses are incompetent, that I know better than they are. A bit of sort of arrogance to me, I suppose. And so I never lasted at one job for more than 11 months in my entire life. I worked at a hotel in Paris. I was a receptionist there. I taught English in Barcelona. I did construction work in Greece. I was a tour guide in Ireland briefly. I worked in television in London. I worked for a detective agency here in Los Angeles. I worked out putting together the first online encyclopedia back in the 1990s. I worked in Hollywood. I had so many different jobs, and I saw so much crap. I saw so many political games, so many forms of manipulation in all of these different areas. So they're all different. Hollywood is very different from New York and journalism, where I worked there, or from working in Paris. But people are people, and they have egos, and their egos get so easily bruised. And if, law number one in the 48 laws of power is never outshine the master. It's not number one for a good reason, because it's one of the most painful experiences in your life, and it happens to everyone. It happened to me in many of these different venues that I mentioned, because I was young and I was naive. And my idea was, if I just work really hard and I try to show how great I am at it, people will love it and they'll promote me. I didn't realize that it's not results that seem to matter to a lot of people. It's appearances, it's politicking, it's soothing their ego. And man, I hated that. Why does the world have to be like that? It ended up inspiring a lot of the 48 laws of power. And it's why in my DNA, I cannot work for other people. I don't like it. I can't do it. I can't handle it. I can work with people on my books and projects, but I can't stand working for other people. So that's sort of why I was so restless. But on the other hand, having all these different experiences, gave me a lot of material for writing. And my motto in life is everything is material. So the bad things that happen to you, I'm just going to put it in my book. If you're going to treat me like shit, even today, now that I've written these books, you're going to be in my book one day. Just remember that it's all material for me. So yeah.
Oh man, you're like the original version of Taylor Swift, huh? So she's writing all these songs about her ex-boyfriends. Is that what we're talking about here, Robert?
Well, I don't ever mention things. I don't say people's names, and I don't go into my personal story.
Likeness.
But
It's just likeness, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's all a metaphor and a symbol. But when I'm talking
Agreed.
about something that happened to Cesare Borgia or something in Louis XIV, I'm thinking of that Hollywood director who screwed me over,
Yeah.
or law number 7, always get other people to do the work but take the credit for it. Happened to me a lot. Those people who've read my book, they know that I inspired that law. They know about the story. I don't have to mention their names. I like to disguise it all. I never make it personal.
No, that's true. And I think we got a lot of listeners that are really resonating with that, not wanting to work with people, because most of the audience of this show is entrepreneurs, people that kind of the mavericks, people that wanted to go out and do things and take risks for themselves. And so they're probably hearing this. They're like,
Yeah.
holy crap, that's why I didn't do good in corporate. And, had I read your book when it came out in 98, probably would have had a lot more impact in my professional career when I was working in oil and gas engineering, because there was several examples of that don't outshine the master situation, where it really hurts people who are very competitive, like myself. And I'm sure like you are a
Yeah.
very competitive person, and you want to strive to do your best. And you think that those merits are going to get you the promotions and things like that. But I found out a lot of times it got me laid off like whenever there was a downturn in the industry, I got laid off one of the soonest ones. And I started thinking about this why, and it's because I started looking back at the clues. And sometimes they knew that I had other businesses and I was making money outside of my career, and I had nicer cars than them, a nicer home than them. And so they were kind of like, oh, well, Tony takes care of himself. So they probably didn't feel as guilty laying me off, even though I was a high performer. And, it's some people will hear that and go, well, he's probably got egotistical because he's saying he was a high performer. No, I actually had the results, and I was very good at
Yeah.
leading and managing people and recruiting and all the things that were necessary for corporate leadership. But I always felt like I was kind of just, you know, easily discarded because of those kind of things. And when I read that book, dude, it was like, that's a mind blowing
Yeah.
moment, you know?
Well, they probably were letting you go also because they were competitive and you were stirring up insecurities in them.
For sure.
Why is Tony driving a better car than me? And I'm his boss. Well, so when people do that, when you have a boss and you've triggered his insecurity or her insecurities, they'll never admit it to you, to other people, or even to themselves. They'll find another way to justify it. They'll go, Tony, he's got an attitude. I don't really like him. He's not actually performing as well as he thinks he is. They'll excuse it in their mind, and unconsciously they're not aware it's because they secretly envy you. And then they'll fire you with some stupid excuse that you could probably see through. Sometimes you don't, because if you're very young, you take it very personally and you wonder why. If you get a little older, you kind of figure out, oh yeah, I triggered their insecurity. But yeah, that's what happened. It has happened to everybody, almost everybody I talk to has a similar story, at least people who are ambitious in life.
So let's give some advice to the people that maybe are confronted with this new reality of don't outshine the master. What would you suggest they do if they're in that situation right now?
Can you hold on one second, Tony?
Yes.
Can you
Yep.
hold on one second? Sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. That was my wife calling from London. I had to just message her on an
No
interview.
problem.
So advice about what? Sorry.
So what would you give advice to someone who may be in that scenario right now, that they
Yeah.
have that boss that they know they could probably outshine, but they shouldn't? Like, how do you handle that?
Well, I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, you probably shouldn't be working for other people, and that's the process you go through. And that's the process I tell people about. Often, what you hate in life is very educational. It teaches you something, right? It shows you, I wasn't intended for this. So I've had many jobs that I ended up hating. And then I realized, oh, it's not in my DNA. I wasn't meant to pursue this as a career. So probably if you're feeling a little bit of discomfort in your corporate job or the politicking, you were meant to be an entrepreneur. But let us say a lot of people are in this scenario and they can't just quit. They have to make money. Their livelihoods depend on it. And the problem we have, we humans, when we're in these scenarios is we tend to take things very personally. We get very emotional. And that's what makes it even worse, right? So the first thing you have to understand, the most important element of this law is when you enter a job or you've been in a job, don't imagine that your boss is somehow this all-powerful person who has no insecurities. They have an ego. And in fact, the higher you rise in a corporation or a group, the more insecure you become. Do people like me? Do they think I'm doing a good job? Why aren't they not smiling at me? Why are they nodding their heads, but they don't really believe it? On and on and on. So your boss is insecure. Keep that in mind, right? And you have one of two ways you can go. You can not care about it and kind of trigger their insecurities, in which case you'll probably end up being fired. Or you can be aware of it and you can turn the game around deliberately as a strategy, making them feel better about themselves, inflating their egos, if you will, soothing it, and complimenting them about things that they're kind of hungry for, that they don't expect, sort of flattery, right? I know that sounds kind of like brown nosing, kind of ugly and manipulative, but believe me, it works. It works to kind of keep them off your back. If you are somebody who's ambitious, who's results driven, and you don't want this kind of weird political games going on, then just find ways to flatter your boss, to make them feel better about themselves, to make them feel that their ideas are brilliant, that they look wonderful, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But just be aware that in the work world, people are judging everything you do. The appearances are extremely important. So things that you say in an offhand in a comment or a little joke, people might take personally. So you have to be a little bit careful. You have to be self-aware. You have to, law number 4, always say less than necessary. Learn how to control your words, what you say, and just be a little bit more aware of this environment you've entered. I compare it to you walk inside, you enter a boxing ring, okay? Now, it's not quite the same because people aren't hitting you in the face. You don't have Mike Tyson there as your boss, but it's kind of brutal. It can be kind of brutal. People can play weird games. And if you enter a boxing ring, you know that that's what it's going to be like. You know that that opponent's going to try and hit you in the face and knock you down. And if they hit you, you don't complain. You don't go, oh, why did you do that? You shouldn't be doing that. That's not fair. No, that's just how things are played. Have that attitude when you enter the work world. This is just like a boxing game. These are the rules of the game. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to get all emotional. I'm just going to learn how to play it well, and not take it so seriously. It's a game. So having some emotional distance from all of these politicking is what kind of saved me, and I think can save anybody.
That's key. One of the things you just said in that segment, you said that as we climb the organizational ladder and move higher up in the ranks, people become more insecure. And that's exactly what I witnessed. It was really later in my career, probably the last 4 roles that I had in the profession, like middle management ranks, right under executive
Yeah.
levels. That's when I started to see more evidence of this kind of behavior from my supervisors. And, sometimes the companies I would go for, I was working for some of the major Fortune top 100 companies, and I was heavily recruited as a high performer. Then you get in there and they kind of stunt your growth, and we, throw roadblocks in front of you and things like that, such. So I think it's a great topic that, hey guys, it's also temporary. Okay. Because we're talking about the 48 laws of power. Understand, like what Robert was saying is like, these are just the rules of the game. You can complain about them, but it's not going to get you the outcome. So if you want to get the outcome, if you want to
No.
win, just play the game by the rules. Like, we didn't get to create the rules. And then knows that this may not be forever. I mean, you may have to start that business, or you may find a better supervisor that serves as a mentor. I've had a few of those as well. And, so, it's a very important thing I think just really wanted to highlight. Well, that's why it's number 1, right? Now, you mentioned law number
Yep.
4, always say less than necessary. What does this mean, and how does this apply nowadays, especially if we're on social media and we're always talking about what's on our mind?
Well, I noticed that in the world of power, like among Hollywood directors and the various people that I worked for, that when you went into a meeting, the people who talked the most were often the least powerful, and the boss was always someone who usually said very little. And because they said very little, they had this kind of presence. And then when they did talk, everybody's listening because they're not talking all the time. And what it does is, first of all, it keeps people on their heels. They're wondering, what are you thinking? He's not saying what he think or she thinks. Wow, that's putting you in the power position, right? It also creates an air of mystery. And people who talk less demonstrate a sense of self-control, which translates into I'm a powerful person. But people who are always yapping, 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 they can't control themselves. It's like they can't control their emotions. They can't control their thinking. That looks weak. It makes you look weak, right? And so it's not like you never talk, but when you say something, it has meaning, it has import, it has value. Now, if you're starting out in a company and there's a meeting, you can't be completely quiet. You have to, say things, you have to contribute. But just keep in mind, the more you talk, the more likely you are to say something stupid that you'll regret. And if you talk too much, you look like one of those weak people that has no sense of self-control. Social media is a different arena, right? That's not usually your work world. I mean, it's something outside of your work world, or maybe it's a part of your work world. But that also applies there because When you tell everybody everything about your life, what I had for breakfast, who I'm dating, where I travel, what I'm thinking, all of my little petty grievances. Oh, this person hurt me this morning. Outrage, outrage, outrage. You look weak. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, you look weak. You look like somebody that just that is just looking for attention, right?
Yeah.
And that's not how power exemplifies itself. Power is not something that goes out there and forces itself on you. Power is something that makes people come, which is one of the laws of power. I think it's number 9. Make other people come to you because you are the powerful person. You don't have to get attention. You don't have to yap all the time. People are coming to you. So on social media, yeah, you have to play the game. Yeah, you have to post things, but keep some mystery involved. Keep some things in reserve. Disguise yourself a little bit so that people are wondering a little bit about you and who you are, and create some mystery. It's a very important law because if you can't control your mouth, your tongue, what you say, you can't control anything about who you are, about your character, your personality.
There's also the economic laws and things. I want to see what your law that relates to this one is. Like, one of my mentors told me that maybe I shouldn't be attending all of these entrepreneurship conventions and all of these events and just making myself very accessible and having a lot of supply of me, right? So laws of supply and demand. And they said actually the people that actually are the highest in the industries of any industry are usually scarcely in demand, and they usually attend very select events, and they're not just trying to network and hey, let's jump on the phone and do all these different things. And I started gaining that awareness probably about 2 years ago, and I did started cut back on attending a lot of the things I would normally attend, and I have seen some
Yeah,
very high improvements from that advice I received. So is there a law that kind of relates to what that is?
there certainly is. I think it's law 16 or so, or 17. It's called use absence to create honor and respect. So if you're always in people's faces, they don't really respect you. But if you disappear for a couple of days, if you don't answer their emails, this pertains also to dating situations, but it applies to the office political world as well. Napoleon Bonaparte had a quote more or less to this effect, that if I appear in the theater in Paris every single night, people will take me for granted. But if I appear in the theater only once a month, people are always wondering, will Napoleon be here tonight? Oh, he didn't show up. What's he doing? Oh, yes, there he is. It creates excitement. He draws attention.
Hmm.
But if you're present every single day, people take you for granted, right? You no longer have that sense of mystery. They're no longer talking about you. So yes, scarcity makes the price go up, and being too present makes the price go down. It's just like any kind of commodity. So you have to know how to be absent sometimes. And even on social media, you have to learn how to use that law. And I know a lot of artists and musicians, people like Beyonce and even Michael Jackson, they knew I have to disappear for 3 years or so. I haven't had an album. People are going, what's its next album? What's going to happen? They're wondering, they're clamoring, they're thinking about it. And then when it comes out, it has double or triple the effect. So even if you're famous, even if you have lots of attention, the game still applies. You have to know when to be present and when to pull back and be absent. If you're absent all of the time, if you never show up, if you're never there, then people won't talk about you. But if you're there, like Napoleon said, just at the certain right, a sweet spot. I appear twice a week on social media. I appear at this meeting once a month. It works perfectly. People are thinking about you, they're fantasizing about you, they're wondering about you, as opposed to, oh, he's there again. Oh, can he go away? I'm sick of him, kind of thing.
Yeah, he's just oversharing on the previous law and then also just over present on this one. That's a good one. So I want to talk about law number 9. I went through your 48 laws and I highlighted a few that maybe apply to the audience. Number 9 is win through your actions, never through argument. Now, this
Yeah.
is a hard one because we see a lot of people bickering back and forth, especially on Twitter and Facebook, and there's all these polarizing topics. And how do you win through actions, never through argument? Is it just do what you say what you do? Is that what it means? Or
Look, I've done this before and it's a mistake. So when my Laws of Human Nature book came out, I had just had my stroke. I was in a very vulnerable position. I was feeling kind of weak physically and maybe a little bit mentally. And there were a couple of people on this one website who were sort of criticizing the book, and they were very stupid. And I argued with them.
Hmm.
And then I felt like 2 days later, I felt really dirty and ugly and stupid. I had lowered myself to being on their level, and I felt personally stupid and diminished by that. And so, do you ever feel good winning an argument online? And what does winning an argument mean? People go, "Oh, yes, you're right." Well, great. First of all, that never happens. Nobody ever admits that you're right. But even if they do, what kind of satisfaction you get from it? You get zero. So my motto in life is do not get into these arguments in the first place. Avoid them like the plague. You're going to feel dirty. You're going to feel stupid. You're going to feel like you wasted your time, right?
Yeah.
So you can't win by demonstrating online, but your silence will speak lots of words. So sometimes, like it doesn't happen very often, but if I'm attacked online or if somebody is attacking me, in emails, etc., I often choose to ignore them, right? And that action demonstrates you're too small for me. I'm an elephant and you're a little fly, and I don't even care about you. I'm not even going to bother to respond. But in life in general, it's so much better to demonstrate your ideas rather than to talk about them. Because as we've learned in the world today, people can say anything, right? You could, for your ridiculous, irrational opinion, I'm not talking about you personally, Tony, you could find some kind of study online that supports your idea, even though your idea is completely whack, right? And so when people quote statistics and studies, we all go, "Oh, come on, they're cherry picking their evidence for their argument," right? Words are useless. Anybody can talk a good game. It's what you do in life that matters. Your results, how you raise your children, how much money your company is producing, how many people you're employing, your productivity. Results, results, results. When you play sports, does it matter if some football player can talk smack and everything, but it doesn't perform on the field? We judge people by the scoreboard, as somebody very Rome, forget his first name.
Jim Rome.
Um, Jim Rome.
Yeah.
Jim Rome used to say, I used to be one of the clones myself. Scoreboard, baby.
Yeah.
So it's scoreboard that matters. It's results. So instead of arguing endlessly with people, just get the idea that what you do talks much greater than anything you can say. And in that book, I give many examples of powerful people who confronted with someone who doubted them. They just focused on proving their idea rather than getting involved in an argument, right? And sometimes the best strategy is to kind of, if it's like your boss and they're coming at you with some incredibly stupid idea and you know it's stupid, you don't argue with them. Maybe what you do, a very powerful, clever thing to do, is you actually do their bad idea and it fails and their name is all over it, right? Okay, but don't argue. Just find through your actions to demonstrate that their idea is basically worthless. That's the importance of that law.
That's a lot of deep insight on that. I get that one for sure. And I've never really enjoyed winning those arguments online when it was someone who was underprepared or had less knowledge, or if you feel like you're just pulling wings off of a dragonfly type scenario. It's
Yeah.
Now I do love a good debate. I do love when people are equally prepared.
Sure.
They're experts in their own regard, and I love that kind of stuff. But it's most of the people aren't that way. The people that just want to troll your posts or say negative things or criticize or project what they're going through onto you. I mean, those kind of things. I'd rather just diffuse those things and really display emotional control in those responses, because they try to get you heated, right? If you just display emotional control, that you're not upset, you're not happy, you're not sad about it. I always realize that, especially people of your stature, Robert, you got a lot of people watching the way you comment. And when we're on
Yeah.
social media, especially, people are always looking to see how we're going to respond to some kind of retaliation or negative comment.
Right.
So, for listeners' purpose, take those as opportunities to show how you should properly respond instead of react. So use that opportunity that, hey, I have a
Yeah.
live studio audience right there, just like we are videoing this podcast, that they're waiting to see how we react. And that's a perfect opportunity for you to be able to do that.
And sometimes you do want to respond. So I'm not saying just never get involved,
Mhm.
but there's a good way to do it and there's a bad way. And a good way would be, for instance, someone comes up with an idea that you disagree with, that you find irrational. In your response, you try and see, even in the stupidest, most irrational comment, there's always a tiny little grain of truth. And a very wise way of doing this is, I see your point. There's actually, there's something interesting there, but here's something else, blah, 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 blah. And you
Mm.
kind of, first of all, you diffuse it by not triggering their ego. You go, yes, you're right. You make a very interesting point. I would also like to add here, and then you
Mm.
could go ahead and you kind of shatter their argument or whatever it is, right? So there are ways of doing it which you don't feel so weak and diminished and, degrading yourself by going down to their level. Because people like to bait you and they like to get you into an emotional response. And that's never wise.
Yeah, don't ever fall into that trap. It's troll bait is what we call it on the internet. So, hey, law 15, this one's more like a blunt force hammer, okay? Crush your enemy totally. That doesn't have a lot of strategy in it, Robert. That just means like destroy your enemy. So why was that one included in the book? I mean, you could almost surmise that would be the outcome, but what made you put that in there and just be very blunt with that one?
It's actually very strategic. I'm sorry to disagree with you very slightly. What you said was very smart, but I would disagree with you. I'm demonstrating my idea here.
Excellent.
It is actually very strategic. So in war, if you have an enemy and you kind of move against them and you kind of you pretty much defeat them, but you don't crush them. What you've created is an enemy now that is burning for revenge, right? And they see a little bit of weakness, like you didn't go all the way, right? You were afraid for whatever reasons. And over the years, starts building up and they're going to find a way to get back at you. It's happened again and again in the history of warfare. It happened with us with Saddam Hussein in the first Desert Storm. Well, we go in, we annihilate his armies, we defeat him, but we don't get rid of Saddam Hussein. We didn't crush the enemy totally. And 10 years later, we paid the price. It cost us millions and millions of dollars to go back there and do the job, which was not really done very well at all, if we even needed to do it. So it's very important in war that if you have an enemy, you either find a way to work with them or you crush them totally. But it's the law of business.
Hmm.
So I'm not saying, Tony, to do that with your friends or your family or people you know. I understand that. And if you read the law closely, I never talk about it in that sense. But do you think companies like Google or Facebook or Microsoft or Elon Musk, that they put up with rivals in their field? The moment they see some small rival on their radar, what's their first instinct? I'm going to crush him. I'm going to buy him out. I'm going
Yeah,
to get rid of them. In the 90s, Microsoft set the paradigm by getting rid of Netscape Navigator. You probably know, nobody probably here remembers
I
Netscape
remember it.
Navigator, but
I
it was the
remember it.
first one. Okay. Well, Microsoft didn't go, oh, let's kind of hurt them a little bit and show we're better. No, they crushed it to the point where Netscape Navigator never existed anymore, right?
Yeah.
So I know so many entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley who had their brilliant little startup bought out by Google or whomever, and that was it. They thought they were being bought out so that they could be, work for Google and do something. No, Google bought them and then placed them on the side and got rid of them completely. It's the law in business. If you have a rival, don't be naive. That bigger fish out there is going to crush you totally if they can. They're going to buy you out. They're going to monopolize the market. They're going to marginalize you however they can. That is the reality of business. It is the reality of warfare, and it's the reality of business. And people, I'm so sick of people like being all wheedly and complaining. Oh, that's such an evil law. Blah, 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 blah. It might be evil, but it's the reality in the business world.
Yeah.
People don't just simply accept having rivals. It challenges them. In business, the whole dynamic is to monopolize your market. So that's what that law is about.
You know, from a business context, I've actually experienced something like that in my life where I got to exposed to corporate bullying because of a legal, right? So when you go up against a large corporation that has an in-house legal team and you have a
Oh,
service or a
yeah.
product that competes with theirs, they can just send you all kinds of cease and desists and make up all kinds of things that they know that don't stand a lick of court trial. There's no crime being involved. There's no non-competes, but they will bury you
Yeah.
in these lawsuits because they can, because it doesn't cost them anything. And their in-house lawyers will just keep sending you these things and making you appear and do all these things. And, you know, they'll say, hey, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, you can keep doing this or you can just stop. So you'll spend six figures of your income trying to defend yourself because you're
Yeah.
right. But is it worth it
Yeah.
at the end of the day? Right.
Yeah. And they know that they're going to grind you into the ground because you can't afford what they can afford to do. Of
That's
course,
right.
that happens all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So law 18, do not build fortresses to protect yourself. What is that one about?
Well, so we're a social animal, okay? And our success, our power in life depends on our connections. And I don't mean just connections to allies and friends or something like on the internet, etc. I mean also to our knowledge, our information. So if you have a business and you're an entrepreneur, let's say, the dynamic is what usually happens in a business when you start out, you're kind of young, you're kind of fresh, you're kind of eager, you want things, you're hungry, you're ambitious. And because you're young, you're kind of close to the ground, you're close to your market, to your audience. You're listening to them, you're getting feedback from them. And then slowly what happens, you get success, you get surrounded by a group of people, your staff grows and grows. They start isolating you from your audience, from your market, from what is going on in the streets. You start surrounding yourself with a bunch of sycophants and yes men and women who say, yes, your ideas are brilliant, Tony, you're doing the right thing. You're not listening anymore to the people, to the streets, to your audience, to your market. You're listening to all the people surrounding you. You're living in a fortress, in a bubble, and it's extremely dangerous. Your livelihood depends on the closeness you have to your audience, to your market. For me, to the people reading my books, right? For whatever your business is like. And the moment you start losing that closeness, that sense of attention to them, and I mean not just attention, but you're riveted on them. Your success depends on the direct, real-time information that you're getting from your customers, etc. The moment you lose that, forget it. You're not an entrepreneur anymore, and you're going to die. You're going to go the way that success always destroys people. They start becoming alienated and distanced from their core, from what made them power. So that's what that law is about. Be very, very wary of how success will tend to put you in a fortress or a castle and isolate you from the core of your power.
Yeah, that's very important. That I've seen that happen to too many businesses and individuals out there, just kind of lost touch of who they were serving, right? So here's two of my
Yeah.
favorites. I'm going to combine these two. So law number 25, recreate yourself, and law number 28, interaction with boldness. Now, these are two that I really enjoy. And I think anybody that's been watching me for a few decades doing the things I do, I think they kind of see I have the evidence of that. But why are these so important for laws of power?
Well, we're animals. We have to admit that we're animals. We're descended from primates, and appearances are extremely important, and image is extremely important. And people will tend to judge you by your appearances. And you can go one of two ways. You can be passive and you can let them judge you and buttonhole you and say, this is who Tony is. This is what he's good at. This is what he's bad at. We've identified Tony and we've defined him. Or you can be active and you can say, I'm not going to let other people define me. I'm going to go out and I'm going to create my image. I'm going to recreate myself. People think I'm this way, that I'm kind of this one-dimensional figure that's only good at this one thing. Damn it, I'm going to show them that I'm actually great at this other thing. I'm going to completely recreate my image. I'm like an artist painting myself, my own portrait, and it's extremely powerful. So the moment people take you for granted and think they know who Tony Whatley is, you surprise them and show them that you can be someone completely different, or not completely different, but somebody different. You have other aspects to your character. It's extremely powerful. And so that people never take you for granted. And they're always surprised and always going, who is Tony? What is he going to do next? I have no idea. Very powerful. Interaction with boldness is extremely important. So, we tend to emphasize words too much. They're so important, but actually body language, actions, behavior are more eloquent, are more powerful than all the words in the world. So if you start a business, if you enter your first move in whatever field, in your strategy or in a marketing campaign, is extremely bold, it demonstrates, without all the words in the world, confidence. It demonstrates momentum. It puts people on their heels. They're going, whoa, wow, that was bold, man. This guy or this woman, they know what they're doing. Wow, I'm impressed. It has an element of impressing people. Whereas if you start kind of, I'm not so sure about my idea. I'm going to kind of put my foot in the water with this sort of half-baked marketing campaign. Well, people read it. They read the body language. They go, you're weak. You don't have confidence. They're not impressed at all. When I did the 48 Laws of Power, my first book, I was a nobody. I had never written a book before. I had nothing to back it up. I had no reputation. I was literally this pretty poor guy living in a one-bedroom apartment in Santa Monica, okay? And I was given an opportunity to write the book by this man who was a book packager. And I could have gone one of two ways. I could have written a book about power that was safe. That was like all the other self-help books out there. I could have read all the books that were popular at the time, like Who Moved My Cheese and all this other shit out there. And I could have been safe. And instead, I decided to be myself, to be really different, to create a book that you might hate, but looks like nothing else out there, with stories on the margins, with images, with all kinds of graphic things, with telling stories from history. It was very bold. It could have failed, but it succeeded, and it's selling now better than it ever did in 1998 because it was so bold, it was so in your face, and it was so different. So instinctively, I knew that when I was 38 years old, when I wrote that book, that if I want success, I have to make a splash. I have to hit people over the face. I can't be soft. I can't give them a little slight slap. I got to punch them hard in the stomach. And that's sort of what I did. And I've been doing that ever since.
I want to dedicate that last segment to a lot of the people in my groups, the people that I've worked with, clients, those of you that have that fear of putting yourselves out there, making the videos, sharing your stories, speaking with some raw emotion from stages and things like that, just being timid and things like that. Like, listen to what the man just said. Like, if you're not going to go bold and just go all in and invest in having that skills, if you don't have the confidence or skills to do that, this is something you can learn. It's not something that we're born with. I had stage fright. I didn't like being on camera. I didn't like my recorded voice. Like, check the boxes, all the insecurities, but I had to go invest and hire coaches and be able to just extract that. I knew it was within me. I always knew that was within me, but man, it was buried deep down inside. So if you're listening to this or watching this, and that's describing you, like, you got to step it up. Like, nobody likes half-assed, mediocre, timid, middle of the road type scenarios. Like, be bold. That's one of the things that's going to get you further in life and draw far more opportunities to you. So I love that one. So guys, there's 48 of these laws. We're not going to go through all those. I want to make a shift here. Okay. But those are the key ones I really wanted to touch on because I think that it applied to the audience. So now going back into our conversation we had in Nashville and also a little bit before we fired up the cameras today, we talked about near-death experiences. So in 2018, you suffered a massive stroke. You went into a coma, kind of impaired some of your left side of your body. Take us back to what was it like going through that? Because I think that it was really profound the way you described that whole event.
Well, I was see, how old was I then? I was 62 years old when it happened. And I was in very, good, excellent physical shape. I was somebody who exercised every single day. It was either swimming, mountain biking, hiking, whatever. I was in really good shape, but I had just finished my sixth book, The Laws of Human Nature, and I was very, very drained. I even thought like I might die. I'm so drained. I put so much into this book. There's nothing left inside of me. And I slowly started to recover. And then in July, I went to New York to meet with my publisher, and I forgot my blood pressure medication at home. So my blood pressure started to rise a little bit. And then I was walking in a park here in Los Angeles after I returned home, and this wasp stung me in the neck. And at the time I thought, wow, this is really weird. It kind of went softly just right in there. It kind of hurt. And then like 3 days later, my whole chest area turned this bright red. It was unbearable itchiness. I couldn't take it. I went to the hospital. They gave me a drug called prednisone, which kind of raises your blood pressure. And about 5 days later, I'm driving a car in Los Angeles. My wife is next to me, and she notices something really strange is going on with my face. I don't even know because I'm not looking at myself. She said one side of my face was just falling down, and I looked really odd. And she knew instinctively something was desperately wrong here. She said, "Pull over, Robert, pull over." I went, "No, it's okay. I'm driving. I didn't even realize what was going on." She literally forced me to the side of the road. I could have easily gotten in a terrible accident. And then I'm in a coma and I don't remember a thing. And I wake up in the hospital. I have no idea what happened. And the coma was very strange because as I drifted in it and as I drifted out, I had some very strange thoughts, things that stay in me to this day. Images of like my family talking about me. I'm above and I'm looking down at them talking about me as if they're at my funeral, kind of thing. And then I had this feeling in my body as if all of my bones were like softening up and dissolving inside of me. Like what held me together was just like melting away. And then slowly I wake up and I recover, and I'm in a hospital and I realize I've lost everything on my left side of my body. It wasn't just that it was weak, I had nothing there. It was virtually paralyzed. Couldn't put any weight on it, couldn't move my left arm. And as somebody who exercised every day and who had this life, it was really, really, really painful adjustment. But also in the Laws of Human Nature, the last chapter I wrote was about mortality and about confronting your mortality. And there's two ways you can confront your mortality. One is kind of the intellectual way. So most people in life never even confront their mortality. They don't even think about it. They put it, oh, someday maybe, I'm not going to die, whatever. Okay. Some people think they're being wise. They think about their mortality. They think they're confronting it, but it's intellectual. And I was one of those people. When it happens, it's not intellectual. It's visceral. It's real. It's in your body. You feel death. You know what the feeling of life is. Your blood is circulating, your heart is beating, et cetera, et cetera. Well, I gained a feeling of what death feels like. Life draining out of me, my bones dissolving, everything happening like that. Death is real. It lives inside of your body right now. Your cells are dying. Death is a reality. It's not an idea. It's a part of life. Just as you feel your heartbeat and your circulation, you can feel your death. You can connect to it viscerally and not intellectually. And that's what my book is about. And that's what I'm preaching to people. My new book, at least, is about. You've got to make it real. It has to be in your gut. And it's not a morbid, ugly thing. It's a beautiful thing. Yes, recovering from my stroke was traumatic mentally as far as dealing with all of my limitations. But knowing that your life is short, knowing that everything you have can be taken away from you tomorrow, makes you realize you can't take anything for granted, nothing for granted. It's like I compare it to like walking on the edge of a cliff continually. Every second you're walking on the edge of the cliff, you look down, whoa, your senses are a lot alert and alive. Everything looks intense around you. You're not awake, you're not asleep, you're not kind of wandering through life. That's how you want to be. You want to be on that cliff's edge. I know sometimes it's difficult because you need to relax, of course, it's very intense, but you want to feel that you're there every minute of the day, that your life is continually at risk. When I was growing up, way back in the dark ages of the early 70s, etc., one of my favorite writers was a guy named Carlos Castaneda, who wrote a series of books called The Adventures of Don Juan. He was this anthropologist at UCLA who befriended an Indian sort of sorcerer, a witch, a curandero. And Don Juan told him, think of death as a hunter. He's continuing, you look over your left shoulder and there he is. But, I'm sorry, but he reframed it as gendered as male. You look over your shoulder and there's that hunter. He's at your heels. He's hunting you every second of the day. You must always look over your shoulder and see it, that he's on your heels. It makes you urgent. It gives you a sense of desperation, a sense of energy. Your life is short. You better take advantage of it. It makes everything look intense around you. So that's my experience of the near-death experience. No longer up here, but in here. And it's kind of the subject of my next book. We can talk about that or not talk about that, but that's quite how I experienced it.
So the thing is I think that you've been a student and practicing stoicism for over 30 years. And memento mori is a very common phrase we hear in that. I love stoicism myself. And it sort of prepares us for these kind of thoughts or relationships with mortality. I mean, you're really just trying to remember every day that you could die every day, right? And I don't think that's morbid either, because I've believed that for a very long time, even doing some of the really risky types things in my life. I just want to live on that edge. I'm not afraid to walk to the edge of the cliff and look over the edge. And because it's exciting to me, not that I could die, that I get to experience those kind of opportunities in life. But
Yeah.
even then, so you're prepared for this, you kind of had that relationship with death, but until you experience it, and I'm not by no means telling people you got to go experience this for yourself, but to us here on this microphone that have experienced that thing. And the weird thing about that is I felt very peaceful in that moment when I was approaching a wall at 130 miles per hour. And you think that you would be very scared in those moments. Did you find also that you felt an extreme level of peacefulness when you're facing that moment?
I wish I could say I have. I've read a lot of accounts that people have had near-death experiences, and what you're talking about is extremely common. I simply passed out. I was unconscious.
Mhm.
My last moments, I wasn't even aware. But when I woke up and I had that image of looking down on my family at my own funeral, it was a very calm feeling. It was a feeling like everything is okay. Life is just going to continue on without you. They're going to be fine. And it was a kind of a nice feeling. It wasn't ugly or grim or made me cry or anything. It was like a very serene sense of life just goes on. So I know what you're talking about is very common with a lot of people with
Mhm.
near-death experiences. Mine was a little bit different, but I know people who like fall from great distances and live. They have something very similar to what you're talking about.
So what were you working on a different book when this occurred? And did you shift bases to start focusing on this new content related to mortality afterwards?
Well, I had the idea in my mind was I was going to do a book, oddly enough, about the power of negative thinking. It's something I've been thinking about a lot. That thinking about what doesn't happen, what you shouldn't do, about free won't instead of free will,
Mm.
and on and on and on. But then after this, I was like in the ambulance on my way home from the hospital. I was going to finally come home and stay in my own bed. And in the ambulance, as I'm passing by and seeing things on the street, I'm going, wow, I'm alive. I'm looking at this world. This is very strange. I've been in a hospital this whole time. And then it was at that point that the idea came to me that I had to write about this in a larger context. So the book isn't about death. It isn't about surviving a near-death experience, although that will be the last chapter of the book. It's about how awareness of something larger than your individual existence, awareness of something that goes beyond your day-to-day petty concerns, the banality of daily life, has this incredibly mind-expanding effect on a person, and it's a beautiful thing. And as I was thinking, I'd always wanted to write a book on this subject, the sublime. I call it the sublime, but I always got distracted, and I 50 Cent came in with the project, and then I wrote Mastery, etc. I thought this is the time to write the book after this experience, because it's not an intellectual idea. It's not something that, I kind of want to write about. It's something very real, very important, very emotional to me. And I want to give the reader a sense of their minds voyaging outside their usual day-to-day thoughts into something utterly different, utterly mind expanding, just like my near-death experience was, and get you out of this kind of rigid, locked in way of thinking that most of us have. And just, I want to blow your mind with all these other ways of looking at the world around us and make you appreciate just the fact of being alive and what an insane gift it is, and how insane it is that we live in this world as it is. So that's sort of where the idea for the book came from.
That's a beautiful description, Robert. I think that it's easy to say, hey, be grateful. And I think that's the level one. We should be grateful for the situation and things we have around us, relationships, our health. But it goes deeper. Like you said, I think on one of your talks, you did a video recently about this experience, and you talked about how you looked outside and you see the sky is blue and the birds are chirping, and your cat rubs against your leg, and you're very hyper aware of these things that you would have just ordinarily just kind of taken for granted in normal life. And I think that that's also what I experienced, is that going through a situation like these, we start to be very highly elevated on things that we took for granted. And we almost like we see in color. If that sounds weird, it's almost like, hey, we were living in black and white, and now we see in color.
That's a very good way of putting it. Yeah, I agree. I look out my window and I see people who are like walking their dog or just kind of running up and down it. And I go, God, I'm so jealous. I'm so envious. I wish I could do that, because it's all been taken away from me. But then I have a second thought, which is they're not even aware of how great it is that they're just walking their dog. They don't appreciate it. I appreciate it. I'm not in their body, but vicariously, I appreciate it and they don't. So it's actually a privilege that I have that they don't have. And I want you, the listener out there, if you're just doing something simple like walking your dog, just realize that if you didn't have it, how amazing it is that you have this dog, because animals are insanely, they're sublime in and of themselves, and that you're walking with them, and then just appreciate those kind of things. They're insane just to even think about them. If you came from another planet and saw what our life is like, you'd go, whoa, that's unbelievable. 300,000 years ago, our ancestors were just like living, this kind of hunter-gatherers life. And here we are in the 21st century. What an insane voyage we humans have been on. Just the kind of thoughts that you don't normally have. And that's what I want to kind of create in this book.
That's powerful. I think that had I not been in that accident in 2015, I'm pretty certain I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. I'm pretty certain I probably would have gone back and still pursued executive roles in oil companies and pursued more six figures on top of six figures. And, I've always had passions. I've always had a good family and good friends, but I just wasn't making a big enough impact. And that was the thing I realized after that, is that had I passed away, I could have impacted millions of people instead of dozens of people around me. Right. And so the best way I could answer that, I think a lot of people want to ask these questions, like deep questions, like, what is your purpose, or how do you find your purpose? Well, to me, it was very simple, and I overcomplicated it, because I think that each of us has gifts or talents or interests or passions that we are unique in this world. We all have different things. So you can't just copy what other people are doing, but what is unique to you? And for me, I've always been fascinated with business and helping people achieve financial freedom and time freedom and location freedom. And like you, I didn't like working for bosses. I was very good at the politics, but I didn't enjoy that. And so getting on the other side of that, I said, well, if I love talking about business and entrepreneurship and things like that, and I've demonstrated very good results and such, why am I not being more vocal and public about doing that and helping people and encouraging people? And the people that were close proximity to me, Robert, over the last 20 years, they benefited greatly. I've made several of them millionaires. Several of them have started
Wow.
successful businesses, and they would always tell me, "You
Fantastic.
should be teaching this. You should be teaching this." And
Well,
I
here
just,
you are.
yeah, and here I am. And I don't think that if I would not have been in that accident, I don't think I would be doing this. I think I would have still done it privately, but not as publicly.
Well, do you ever have the feeling that, I know it's kind of weird and it's not very scientific, but that it was meant to happen,
Yeah,
that there was a kind of almost a fate involved in that?
I do.
Because I know for me personally, I could have easily died or had severe brain damage if it had occurred when I was alone on a hike or swimming or whatever. But it was meant to happen this way so that I'd be alive and that I could now write another book about it. Although it might be complete bullshit, I might be, conning myself. I like believing that there was some kind of fate involved in it.
I do too. I do too. I think that if we remove the fate idea, we remove the hope. And sometimes hope is
Yeah,
that last driver that we have when things are all the way down.
yeah,
So
definitely.
great conversation, brother. I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed getting to hang out and meet you in person.
Yeah,
And I
me
look
too.
forward to your next book. And I really do. I love
Yeah.
this. This conversation has been very powerful and I enjoy it.
Yeah, well, hopefully I'll be in Houston one of these days and
There you
we'll
go.
connect and have lunch and continue the conversation. And when the next book comes out, maybe you'll have me on the show again.
Oh yeah. Put me on the book launch team. I want to be a part of that for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Sorry about the computer issues.
hey, technical glitches, but we handle it like professionals, right? We just move
Yeah,
on.
that's
We
right.
just, we just edit
That's
things and
right.
move on. So,
That's right. That's right.
so
That's
Robert,
one of the laws of power.
if people want
Yeah.
to find you or connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that nowadays?
Well, I have a website that we're trying to it's had some problems lately, but I'll send people to that. It's called Power Seduction and War.com. All one word, Power Seduction, and War.com. There you'll find links to my Twitter, my Instagram, my TikTok. Yes, I have a TikTok account, and to my YouTube channel, all my socials, as well as an email address to write me and say how much you love or hate my books, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be the best place to reach me at.
He's welcoming all critics, but I don't think you have that many nowadays. You've got the results. You've proven yourself.
Yeah,
Done some amazing things, and one of my top
yeah.
authors of all time. So I appreciate being on the show, man.
Thank you, Tony. I'm really glad we met in Nashville and we got to do this today. So thank you.